So ever since David Grush came forward with his testimony in front of Congress, I keep getting so many comments under my still quite popular Bob Lazar video of people saying, can you please do David Grush next, right? I mean, everything he says corroborates everything that Lazar said 30 years ago, around 35 years ago, which means it must be true. Right, that guy says the same, it must be true. Grush confirms everything, down to the numbers of the craft, and Jeremy appears in Congress. What do you think now? The whole thing is basically confirmed. How could you possibly doubt this? Right, now I've looked a little bit deeper into the David Grush story, and there are quite a few things that I would like to point out to you that kind of question his credibility. Now, again, this is not a hit piece. I don't know whether he speaks the truth, and I'm not here to tell you he doesn't. But there is this tendency whenever you see podcasters who are in the UFO field or documentaries about UFOs, that they conveniently leave out certain parts of the story. We've seen that with my Bob Lazar video, where I highlighted loads of things that are never mentioned or rarely mentioned in any documentary or piece about Bob. And while it's correct they don't debunk him, they don't disprove that what he says is wrong, it's still valuable information that should be out there, and that a lot of people seem to leave it out conveniently also says a lot about the field of UFOs in general, in my opinion. But let's talk about David Grush. If you click this video, I will assume that you're kind of familiar with who David Grush is, but if you're not, I'm going to give you a quick rundown because he is much less part of popular culture, so to say, at least for the time being, as Bob Lazar is. So David Grush served for 14 years as an intelligence officer in the Air Force and National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. He is now retired. Grush also was part of 2 Pentagon task forces investigating UAPs up until early this year, until he came out and left his previous job. Now, he came out and testified under oath alongside 2 former fighter pilots who also claim to have had first-hand experiences with UAPs. One being Navy Commander David Fravor, which you may know from the Joe Rogan podcast. He was there and told his story about the Tic Tac UFO he encountered. Now, these people were claiming under oath what seems to back up everything that Bob Lazar claimed in the 80s or late 80s. So, for example, that the government owns and hides alien spacecraft. That, along with the spacecraft they recovered, they found dead pilots, okay? He also claimed that he has secondhand knowledge of American citizens having been harmed and even killed as part of the government's effort to cover up this information. Now, this is a very top-line rundown. I ask you, if you don't know anything about this story, to please go to the Wikipedia page, do a little bit of your own research, read up on this, because this story is way more complex. The things that Grush said go way deeper than I can kind of put it here in these 2-3 minutes. So please read up on it if you're not familiar with the story. And looking at this, why would anyone doubt him? His credentials are very impressive. When he talks, he seems very credible. But again, there are a few points that people conveniently leave out. So let's get to those. So for example, there have been allegations of psychiatric detention and substance abuse against David Grush. Now, obviously, again, these are just allegations that are out there. But at October 1st, 2018, Grush was committed, at least this is what this article you see here claims, to a mental health facility based in part on a report that he had made a statement, I can't read this word, I don't think, on YouTube, after Grush's wife told him he was an alcoholic and suggested to get help. Okay, so again, similar to a lot of the stories we hear around Bob Lazar, this doesn't disprove him. Many people suffer from mental health challenges, and these allegations do not say what he says is not true. But it undoubtedly does question his credibility to an extent, and again makes you wonder why this is kind of not a big thing nobody talks about in the UFO community. However, despite all these challenges, all these accusations and rumors of substance abuse, and him having these challenging circumstances around him, as it seems, he still kept his security clearance despite all that. By the way, all these articles, everything I'm showing here, I will be linking down in the description, so you can go do your own research, read up on the details of what I'm talking about. So these allegations that I'm talking about right now are mostly brought forward by Ken Klippenstein, okay? And it's not just him writing this article on The Intercept. He also went to Twitter at the time and said things like UFO whistleblower David Grush's wife called him an alcoholic and pled with him to get help amid a drunken rage for which he was institutionalized in 2018. A similar incident took place in 2014. David Grush himself has actually commented on these allegations, saying that he was suffering from PTSD and grief and depression, and that led him to, but still, sure, it doesn't automatically disprove anything he says, but someone who went through that, someone who has these challenges, is certainly not as credible as someone who doesn't. Like, for example, if you want to be a commercial pilot and you have only the smallest indicator of having mental health challenges, you just can't be a pilot anymore, okay? Not saying that David Grush is a pilot, but he's working in very high ranking positions, and he's trusted with very, very delicate information. So even if it was grief, depression, PTSD, these are all not great ingredients for someone at that level having access to that kind of information and then coming forward with a story like that. It just does put a few question marks around it, okay? But let's talk about Commander Fravor. You all remember the guy looks like that. He was on Joe Rogan. And to be honest, I really enjoyed the episode. He broke down his experience with his Tic Tac UFO that was actually hovering above the sea, right? And he said you could almost see another object under the water. Then it shot up and it knew the cat points where they were going and regrouping with their jets. He's a jet fighter pilot. So it's a fascinating story, but in this video, and I'm not going to play it because obviously then they can copy strike my video, but I'll link it down in the description as well. And it's a little clip that shows Commander Fravor admitting that they used to hoax UFO sightings for fun. Okay, in the sense that the way he describes it, and I'm obviously paraphrasing, go watch the clip yourself, but he's basically saying they would be flying in this kind of stealth mode, so the jet would be extremely quiet, and then they would see there would be some campers or something like that, and then, if I understood him correctly, they would like silently fly up to those campers, and then over them pull up and give full boost, so they would kind of go up straight to the sky. So for those guys looking up, it just looked like a weird glowing sphere descending into space or into, you know, the upper stratosphere or whatever, just to play with these people, right? And he's saying this in this video. Now, again, does this disprove everything else he says? No, it doesn't. But it does show a little bit of a lighthearted attitude when it comes to this stuff. Okay, he's not like, dude, this is dead serious. No, it's also a joke. And again, it doesn't really add credibility to what he's saying, okay? If they have these kind of, check it out, it was a UFO jokes going on in their military bases amongst these pilots, then it's not a huge step from there to turning it into a massive story that you claim happened and then go on Joe Rogan and cash in on the book. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that's what's going on, but that's definitely a possibility that has to be considered. Another beautiful aspect, coming back to David Grush, that I just love, is that there are posts like this one, right? Like David Grush, the UFO guy, is probably more likely to get messed with by co-workers. Like, what's more likely? That we have a secret program with alien craft and buddies, or that his co-workers were screwing with him because he's gullible than anything else? Look, I don't know David Grush, and I'm sure if you're too gullible, you wouldn't make it in a position like the one he's been in. But there are very smart people working with you if you're on that level, okay? And I could totally imagine them playing that kind of mind game with him, making sure he sees some documents. Because as far as I'm aware, I don't think David Grush ever saw all these things firsthand. He only saw documents that indicate that this is real. And please correct me if I'm wrong there, okay? This is what I read. But if you work in this Pentagon UAP research program I mentioned at the beginning, and he was part of it, and you see, check out Grush, dude, he believes anything, you know? And here are these guys, and they're just playing a trick on him. They're just fooling with him, and for some reason it has taken up a life on its own, and now he's on freaking Joe Rogan. Oh, he's actually not, but he wants him on. Joe Rogan wants him on. And it's just become this huge story that nobody intended it to be. They just wanted to screw with David Grush. And I mean, again, weighing up possibilities against each other. The guy on this Reddit post is actually making a really good point. To say, like, what is actually more likely? That some creatures from billions of light years potentially away come to this planet, their spaceship fails, they crash, we retrieve the bodies, okay? Like, there's a lot of ifs going on there. Or it's just these people screwing with him, okay? And putting that stuff on his desk and he loses his mind over it. Like, just from a sheer percentage of possibility, I would say the latter is the more possible option. Like, it's just more likely. You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. I guess my point is, looking at his testimony, looking what he says, there's as much evidence for him making it up or being fooled with or being played as there is evidence for it really happening. It's just claims, okay? And yes, his claims corroborate the claims of Bob Lazar that he made 35 years ago. But that's not how evidence works, okay? You need something tangible. You know, just because you're a paleontologist, you can't say, I've seen dinosaurs. That's not how it works. Nobody will believe you. And that's in part also why nobody believes this. It's not necessarily nobody believes, but it has no impact. Here is David Grush and these Air Force pilots doing what has already been done in 2001 with the Disclosure Project by Dr. Greer, telling these incredible stories, world-changing stories, right? This should question everything. We should be questioning religion and our own creation right now, knowing nobody cares. Nobody cares. The story just dies down, it goes away, nobody gives a crap. And in part that is because we have other problems, right? Like this tweet says quite rightly, aliens exist, we have proof. Everyone dealing with inflation, climate change, severe debt, depression, housing crisis, long COVID. You know what I mean? In part it is because people are like, bro, I really don't care. Like, unless there's a freaking spaceship hovering over my house that's going to shoot it down tomorrow, then I will deal with the problem. Right now, I have other issues. So that is part of it. But also, many people are just smart enough to look at it and say like, bro, there's nothing there. Unless you're part of this UFO cult and you really want to believe with all the power of your heart, then you get blinded and you don't even ask any questions about it. And beyond that, the simple argument to say like, why is he or why is Lazar still alive and publicly, or at least publicly talking? Surely if that information would be real, and that would be one of the biggest kept secret of humanity, and they would do everything to silence these people and make sure at least they don't, sure, you don't go out and just kill them. Even Bob claims there was an attempt on his life. Thing is, if you look at it from this angle, it's a very different story. It raises many questions, and it is by far not as clear-cut as a lot of UAP enthusiasts make it out to be. And then often you get people saying like, so what do you want? What is that evidence you want, right? You're here saying we never have any evidence, right? It's like, yeah, that's right, because there is none. What we want is this. Okay, this is what we want. Here, this is fake, obviously, right? Don't need to put that down there. But here we have a skull that is clearly not terrestrial. Like that, you can go, you can take samples from that. You can find out what it's made up of. You can read its DNA, you can analyze it and come to the conclusion independently amongst 40 different scientists that this is not terrestrial. Now we're talking, okay? We're still not talking about UFOs landing and aliens coming out, but at least we talk about aliens existing, because here is a piece of tangible evidence. Again, this is fake, okay? I'm just putting this out there because it represents the idea of what we, the skeptics, want, right? We don't want scanned documents. It's like, oh, here's this top secret document that talks. Like, I don't care, bro. Anything, I can fake anything for you in Photoshop and make it look like a copy of an old document. It's not even hard to do anymore. So this idea that these testimonies, even under oath, even from very credible people, mean something beyond it just being a story at this point is just wild, right? There is nothing there. Don't get me wrong, right? Does the government, the US government in this case, investigate flying objects that they cannot identify? Yes, I'm sure they do. Is it possible that Grusch speaks the truth? Yes, yeah, it is possible. I'm not saying he's definitely not speaking the truth, but I have nothing to go on. He's not giving me anything that I can say, here, this is what I'm resting my David Grush case on. It is just words. And if the last few years kind of have taught me anything, then it is that humans are like highly susceptible to wanting to believe that reality is far more interesting than it actually is. Okay, humans just have this tendency of seeing things that can be explained that are just a little bit boring if you explain them. It's pretty simple, actually. No, it's got to be the big thing. We have to build on it. We have to turn it into this fantasy land, because that is much more exciting. That is much more fun. We can write headlines about it, debate it on Twitter and Facebook for hours. Nobody wants the boring truth, the scientific truth. And part of that is this anti-scientific movement that we see now going around the world, which is insane as well. But in general, like eyewitness testimony, even by someone with his credibility, it just means very little to me personally. So until any actual physical evidence is produced, or until there is a flood of credible people or accounts of people coming forward, I will just disregard it. It's a fun story. And you should do the same, because you going out there claiming this is the truth and Grush's testimony verifies everything that Lazar says. It's like, yeah, but that doesn't make it true, dude. It just shows that people like you are struggling to differentiate what is evidence, what can be considered a confirmable truth, and what is just a great story at this point. And beyond that, we always keep hearing this as well, like a cover-up of this magnitude over that long period of time, right? Lazar in the late 80s already worked on it. So many people work on these projects over that long time, and nobody comes forward. Like the magnitude of organization and logistics that would be required to keep thousands and thousands of individuals to participate but never talk about, it's almost not possible. This is not how humans work. So there are just these logic holes. And you may say like, okay, why is he doing it then? What motivation would David Grush have to come forward and tell this as a whole lie? I don't know. Maybe he wants to sell a book. Maybe there will be a Grush book, okay? And there are a lot of people who want to hear all the details of his story. Maybe he just wants well-paid interviews, make some money, right? Joe Rogan already said he wants him on, and sure, you can build a career on that. Maybe it's just attention. Maybe the guy is that weirdo, that gullible guy that his colleagues really just try to make fun of all the time, bit of a loser internally behind the scenes without us really knowing. And here he is just craving attention, some positive attention, and that's like why he's doing it. Who knows, okay? But there are potential reasons that motivate a man like this. And in the past, we've seen it. Experts can be wrong. Here, for example, is a video that a captain of a 320, 321 on a US carrier posted. Breaking it down, they saw these lights saying they never tracked on radar. Then a few minutes later, I saw two objects round in shape, one lighted and one not, flying in formation just above the horizon. The object would illuminate to be as bright as a star for several seconds, then go back to dark for a few minutes. So here's a pilot, right? It's a trained observer who is probably a man. If he's a captain, he spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours in the air in airplanes. Well, actually turns out there are many similar cases. Like this pilot's UFO sighting is 100% consistent with Starlink. Okay, network of Starlink satellites, they do weird things in the sky. They are looking towards the sun, which is about 40 degrees below the horizon. That's the location where Starlinks are flaring. The direction of the motion is also consistent. So they broke down the whole thing in terms of the angle. They found out it's just Starlink. And here you have a pilot, a trained pilot, who's just wrong. And there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not saying, pilots fail and they can't describe anything. It must be a lie. I'm just saying they can be wrong too, okay? They are also just humans. Nobody is perfect. Ultimately, we don't know. We don't know if the David Grush or Commander Fravor testimony is real. We don't know if they're speaking the truth. It could be real, absolutely. Many wild things are happening, but I think healthy skepticism is more than appropriate in that particular case. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this little breakdown of the background of the David Grush story and some of the facts you may have not known about. If you enjoyed the video, then please smash the like button. Also, join our Discord, okay? It's free. I'm hanging out there. Loads of people discuss not only conspiracy theories, but video games, politics. It's a great community, okay? So the link is in the description. It's totally free. I'd hope to meet you over on the Discord. On your way out, please don't forget to smash the like button. Subscribe to the channel for more. I would hope to see you in another video. Take care of yourselves. And I'll see you in the next one. I'm out. Bye.